Welcome back, peeps, to Perfect.dev. On today's cast, we have our wonderful guest, Jeff Delaney from, you might know him from Fireship.io or AngularFirebase before that. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So happy you could make it on the show. I know it's hard to find time in your busy schedule, so really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I think the first thing I noticed was this Kaggle thing. Is that kind of your start into fame of programming?
I wouldn't say that's my start. I've been doing this for probably about 10 years now professionally. Kaggle is kind of like a marketplace for machine learning. So like companies will crowdsource machine learning problems just to the community on Kaggle, and people will go there to compete, usually for like a lot of money, like $100,000 plus per competition, and try to implement the best machine learning solution. So I got into that for a while and sort of, I wouldn't say like I'm great at machine learning, but I participated in that quite a bit. And that's kind of what that's all about, I guess.
Is that something that you're still like actively participating in, or is that kind of come and gone?
At this point, it's kind of come and gone. I don't really have time to do it now. It takes, if you really get into a competition, it will take up like literally all of your time, because you'll be wanting to, you can only do a few submissions a day. So you'll like do a few one day, and then you'll have to come back and do more the next day.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If you're really into it, it takes up a ton of time.
I've been wanting to do AWS's, what's the little car called? I can't remember right now. It's a machine learning, but you basically like end up driving models for this car around. So it's definitely a cool industry to get into.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. It's not as glamorous when you get into it. Like a lot of people want to like tune these neural networks and create self-driving cars and stuff, but it turns out it's mostly like data collection, and it's really tedious and really hard to clean this data. Like you can imagine going through an Excel spreadsheet and like taking out every bad data point. It's really not very fun to do like on a large scale problem.
Yeah, it sounds a little mind numbing.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Front end, you get that immediate reaction.
Yeah, like I've mostly been a front end developer, or you could say a full stack developer. So I get a lot more, I think, satisfaction out of that overall, because in those cases, you're actually building something, you have a spec, you can kind of follow and build, some kind of real world product.
Yeah, for sure.
Machine learning, you might be spending months on a single problem and then like realize your data is not good enough, or your whatever, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to face that if you're doing machine learning.
That's probably not something I'm super pumped to get into as far as the tedious part of it, but it's definitely something interesting. So yeah, I'm sure other people out there would love to get into it too. Especially from like Firebase has its whole like TensorFlow piece behind the hood and stuff like that. So that's cool.
Right. Yeah. When I first got into it, there weren't like machine learning APIs. It was just you'd have to roll out your own stuff in Python, but now there's a lot of good APIs that solve the most common problems, which is nice.
That's cool. So I know like on your GitHub, I think you still have the code. I'm going to totally botch the name on this. Is it code diode?
Diode, like a diode.
So is that kind of what got you started into tutorials because of that, or?
Yeah, I guess that was like, you could call that like kind of a failed project. I was mostly doing consulting at that time, and I wanted to take some of what I was doing with consulting and create tutorials, or sort of like, similar to what I'm doing now, actually, just really short and focused tutorials on things that I found useful.
Yeah. So was that kind of what launched you into Angular Firebase? Did that come before it, and then it kind of morphed into that side of it?
Yeah, that came before it, and I just sort of abandoned that project once I decided to focus on Angular and Firebase, because that's what I was doing for a client at the time. So it made a lot more sense to just rebrand it into something, very niche and very focused.
So I think in the past you've said that like it was maybe a happy accident that you started learning Angular, or you knew Angular, and you started kind of putting the pieces together between Angular and Firebase, and you like started a few tutorials and the videos and things like that. Can you talk like what that beginning of Angular Firebase looked like?
Yeah, so I've always been like like I started doing professional development with Ruby on Rails. That's how I got my like first, well, before that doing like PHP for a company, but on my own doing Ruby on Rails consulting for other companies. And I've always been kind of like not, I won't say anti, but I've been like not very fond of strong typing and like very verbose code and stuff like that. And so I had a client that wanted to use Angular, which required TypeScript, and wasn't super excited about that. But once I actually got into it and saw the value that TypeScript brings to a project, especially as a project gets bigger and more complex, I really started to like it and really embraced it after that. And then at the same time, I saw a lot of potential to create content around it because there really wasn't very much out there. And it worked really well with Firebase, and combining the two was like a whole new platform in my eyes for building full stack apps with minimal effort.
Yeah, I think in the early goings, like what led me to your site was there just wasn't enough documentation kind of hooking the two together. And correct me on this, you might remember, but the actual GitHub repo for, I think it was at that time, Angular Firebase 2, the kind of side project within Firebase, building that out, was just kind of starting along.
Yeah, so they had AngularFire 2, which is still in the same repo. It's just called AngularFire now, but it's an officially maintained project. Guys on the Firebase team were actually maintaining it. But yeah, they had that project going, and then like maybe a few months after I started AngularFirebase.com and created a bunch of content around it, they just completely changed the API like 100%, like breaking changes across the board. So I had to basically all the content I made for the first 6 months became obsolete within a few days, which was disappointing. But that's like, if you get into making content in tech, like that's going to happen on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's for sure hard to keep up with all the changes, especially in like front end web development. Every single time they update stuff, just trying to keep those tutorials flowing. So
yeah, for sure. It's like, even if it's not a breaking change, like say it's React hooks or something, like nobody wants to learn about old like non-functional components in React now. So you kind of have to like update everything to use whatever is cool at the moment.
So I guess, yeah, on the same chain of thought, full disclosure, like I think I became a pro member or lifetime pro member, whatever that is.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I don't know, a few years ago, maybe it's been 3 years. So Jeff was actually the reason that I started doing everything I'm doing now as far as tutorials and the podcasts, YouTube. So it was super exciting to kind of follow along your journey. And I think when I was in early days, maybe you're at 50K subscribers on YouTube. And I think I just checked, you're almost to 275,000 as of this recording. So props to you. I mean, it's definitely it's a hard work after you start making a little bit of content. You have to keep up regular basis. So you've done a fantastic job with the platform.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It's especially doing YouTube. It's very momentum based. So you have to, if you really want to do well at it, you have to keep a consistent schedule going and try to like kind of make every video better than the last one.
So I think you have kind of a different style. What do you think makes your tutorials like easy to digest, and why do people like kind of glom onto that so easily?
Well, I think like some people love my style. Some people love my style, but some people hate it because it tends to be too fast. Like if you plan to like sit there and code along with my videos, it's not going to go very well. What I try to do is take something that could be a long format and like condense it down to the bare minimum of what you actually need. So you can get something, through something very quickly without like, sitting there listening to a bunch of unnecessary stuff that you don't want to hear.
Yeah, for me, even going through like full-blown tutorials, I'm often listening at like 1.25 or 1.5 times speed just to kind of like go through it. And yours is like, it's perfectly paced. And if I ever need to get back to anything, I just either open up the tutorial page or jump into the GitHub repo, and right there's all the answers. So I kind of feel like your video is kind of like the piece. It's like the trailer to the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this is about, and I can keep going.
Yeah, so I originally started like just at a normal pace, and then it kept speeding up, and then I think I eventually got too fast. And now I've sort of like, I feel like I've settled into what I think is the right pace.
Yeah, I think it works. And I think other people are pulling you in now. I don't know if it's top secret, but Norwal's got your voice behind their videos. So props for that.
Yep. They, Jeff Cross is actually, he lives very close to me in Arizona here. So we hang out on occasion.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So at this point, I know it seems like you love doing the content piece to it. Are you liking kind of the coding more or videos more? Is it just the whole process? What's that like for you?
I definitely like the creative process of making videos, but I feel like to really add value to the developer community, like I need to be building something real world as well. Like I need something practical to be working on to really know what to even make content about. Previously, I was doing that mostly through consulting, and I still do like kind of lightweight consulting through Fireship, but I am working on a few side projects like a component library for Firebase and stuff like that, and trying to really find the best way to build these things. And then, you know, I kind of take what I learned from that and turn that into video content.
Cool. So for the most part, it sounds like you're able to run with Fireship and tutorials and YouTube. I know YouTube's not a ton of monetary piece, but you're at least making enough where you don't have to do, you know, the 9 to 5 type of job, and you can freelance when you need to.
Yep. Yeah, it's mostly like it's mostly supported by the Fireship Pro membership. So yeah, YouTube on its own wouldn't be enough to like be doing this full time.
Right. I think people don't realize the YouTube game. You have to have many millions of subscribers to make that work.
Right. Yeah.
Which you're getting to. That's good.
Yeah, I think you need to be hitting like at least hundreds of thousands, if not like close to 1 million views per video, and doing one of those at least like a few times a month to even make it like a decent income.
For sure. So I think kind of leading into it's more of maybe my question and my interest, but the GDE side of things, were you basically approached because you put out so much Firebase Angular content that Google's like, we have to make this guy a GDE, like everyone's going to his site? How did that look for you?
Yeah,
and I know I have your YouTube video. I'll put it in the show notes too of how to become a GDE. So
yeah, that was pretty much how it happened. David East, who works at Google, he's a developer advocate for Firebase, was the person who nominated me, and he's got a bunch of awesome YouTube videos out there that I sort of was kind of following in his footsteps. And he still makes videos for the Firebase channel as well, but just not quite as often. He was the one that nominated me, and they were kind of getting my feedback on different things for Angular Fire and stuff like that. So it was just kind of a natural connection based on the content I was making. Very cool.
Yeah. Do you find the GDE program to have opened other doors for you at this point?
It's opened some doors. Like it's been really good for networking. They do a GDE summit in San Francisco every year, which I go to, and there's a lot of, you know, smart, very talented people there to meet. So that's been good. I don't utilize it as much as I could. Like one thing a lot of people do is they do public speaking and they'll travel around, and Google will pay for you to go to these talks. So that's a very valuable thing as part of the GDE program.
I don't know of a conference you've spoke at. Is that kind of not your niche as much as kind of doing the tutorials online and staying behind the curtains a little bit?
Yeah, it's not like, especially at this point, it's not like for the amount of work that goes into a talk, like it wouldn't be very big of an impact for me to like spend all that time making this talk and then giving the talk. Like it wouldn't reach enough people compared to the amount of people I can reach on YouTube.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
But that being said, I mean, I should take advantage of that more if I.
It's hard. I mean, speaking is definitely, it's a skill in its own. I just finished up a influence for speaking through my work through my day job, and it's a process. Like I'm learning how many pitfalls there are and how much work I need to do. It's tough.
Yeah, it's a lot different speaking in front of a crowd too. I mean, you have like the nerves that go along with that, and you know, you have to perform all in one stretch. It's not like YouTube where you can cut out every single segment and make it perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you have built up an awesome community, basically on your Slack channel and through Fireship. Can you talk a little bit about like the shift from Angular Firebase over to Fireship? Was that just you knowing that you wanted to focus on more things than Angular, or what kind of made that happen?
Yeah, for me, it was mostly a creative thing, just being able to like branch out to other things that weren't specifically about Angular and Firebase. It's kind of difficult because like you want to focus on a niche. If you like really want to create content professionally, like you should focus and be the best at that particular niche. But at the same time, it's hard to like keep that creative energy going if you're focused on the same thing all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, I want to focus on other things like Flutter and different, like just more generic, like Node.js backend and front end stuff. So yeah.
That was going to kind of lead into my next question. Do you think Flutter's going to continue to grow as fast as it has? I know there's always talk of Google's next operating system and where Flutter fits into that. Do you see that kind of growing like crazy, like it has been?
I do. I definitely see Flutter being very solid in the future. I think like a lot of new tech, it kind of goes like peaks way up and then goes through the trough of disillusionment, as they call it, and then it goes into like the plateau of profitability or whatever they call it.
Yep.
So I think Flutter saw like a ton of hype last year, and it's definitely a very awesome tool. And I think it'll continue to be big, like kind of rivaling React Native for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised the way they attempted or are still working on creating the web versions out of Flutter. I thought they'd deal with that more like I guess how React or like how Ionic with components it was handling that, but it seems like they're almost painting like a canvas on a web page. That's like, whoa, that's not quite web. What just happened? Yeah, have you had time to spend any time with that?
I've spent a little bit of time with it, and like at the very early beta, I haven't messed with it in a few months, so it may have improved, but I think it's definitely kind of underwhelming. Like especially if you just look at it from an end user's perspective. Like when you go to a Flutter app on mobile, it's awesome.
Yep.
But the Flutter web apps were like kind of laggy and weird looking. They didn't look as crisp as like a normal web app.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting if they change kind of the render engine or something to spit out actual web code that looks nice.
Well, it's kind of like beyond my pay grade, but I think the cool way to do it would be like Blazor does it.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with that, it's like you can build web apps with C# and what it does is compile the WebAssembly. So you have, instead of running like vanilla JavaScript, you have this WebAssembly bundle running your code.
Yeah, it's funny.
Something like that, I think it could really work for the web.
Everyone at work, they used to be more .NET core. We're a consulting agency, but the Blazor talk around the shop, let's just say, it's bananas. Like they're all so geeked about it. So
yeah, I can see that being a big deal, especially if you know C# well.
Yeah, I had Guillermo Rausch on, who wrote Nest.js and founded Zeit. He was talking about, we got into a discussion about WebAssembly and kind of the future of it, and will we all be kind of heading that way in 5-10 years? I'm kind of curious where that'll end up, especially with apps like Figma coming out. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of potential. Like I would love to be able to use like my video editing tools in a web browser. Like I think that would be amazing, and it should be possible, I would think, in the future with WebAssembly. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, just like this tool we're using right now with StreamYard, to be able to take that and just start editing right live without having to go into Photoshop, Premiere Pro or anything like that. It would be a game changer for sure. Yeah. Not to dive too far back, but the Angular side of things, we have a big release that came out, Angular 9 Ivy. For those who don't know why they named it Ivy, it's the 4th generation, so it's actually I and V in normal Roman numerals, but everyone keeps calling it Ivy. Do you think that's a big game changer? Do you think like, oh, this just works and sets us up for the future a little better?
I think it's like I'm glad it's finally here, and like I'm glad they took a long time to make sure they got everything right. Like I updated Fireship and it saved a decent amount of the bundle size from that app, and it like made the build times a lot faster, which was nice. as far as like a game changer, like changing the direction of Angular, I don't think it's going to do much. Like Angular is very mature and solid. Like it's just going to continue to, I think, be where it's at for the foreseeable future anyway.
Yeah. I had Aaron on, Aaron Frost for Scully, and talking about that. And when we were talking about Angular 9, he mentioned like the kind of having that engine and the hooks that are in there. It's kind of setting up the future for kind of what they're able to do with the engine going down the road. So I'm excited for the Angular team to kind of see what comes out of that next.
Yeah, that's always a big thing that was kind of lacking in Angular 2 from the from the early days, is like you couldn't just use it with a script tag, and it wasn't very like easy to use in a small, like lightweight kind of modular way. So with Ivy, it seems like we'll get more flexibility there.
For sure. So to dive into a few picks here, my first pick is your 100 seconds of code. I'll throw it up on the screen here. And basically what you're aiming for here is like a very quick way to approach like common problems. Is that kind of the appropriate way to say it, I guess?
It's more so than being like a common problem. I would describe it as like something you should know that you might not like really understand very well. You can watch this and get a solid understanding of it just from watching that 100-second video. So it's probably not like something you're going to code along with, but something you'll like fully understand what that thing does that you've been hearing about.
Cool. It looks like I had to reinstall my Mac, so I didn't give the right permissions for screen share at this time, but I'll definitely put that in the links coming out the other side. I'm loving the 100 seconds. I know it probably doesn't help your YouTube stats or whatever, but again, it's one of those easy resources I can go back to and be like, oh yeah, Jeff talked about Electron this week. I'm going to go check out that little snippet he had there. So
right.
I'm digging it.
Like the whole reason I started this series was because I was going on vacation and I wanted to like still be able to produce small chunks of content while I was away. But like the feedback has been amazing. People want to see more of them. So I'm definitely going to be creating more going forward.
Cool. And I know you have a pick of your own. Do you want to talk a minute about that?
Yeah. So just a site I've been using, like if you watch my videos, you may see a lot of like PNG graphics that have the background cut out. So if you wonder how I do that, there's actually a machine learning app called remove.bg. And this is a web app. You can upload your files there and it'll use machine learning to like remove the background from the image, no matter what that image is. And it's like, super effective. So it's just kind of a cool use case, practical use case for machine learning.
Yeah, it looks super cool. I'll definitely put the link out there. And if I edit up this video correctly, I'll throw some images in of it too. It looks sweet.
Cool. Yeah, nice.
So very cool. So I have one last random thought, but I noticed you are PADI certified. Are you still diving these days?
Not too much. I talk about it all the time, but I haven't been doing much diving. I have 2 small kids, so it's like very hard to get out there and do stuff. We just went to Australia, and I wish I could have gone diving at the Great Barrier Reef. I think I'll do that someday in the future. But
very cool. Yeah, we'll definitely have to hook up some time, go diving. I only dive down in the warmth, so up here in Michigan, it's not even worth it in the inland lakes most of the time. But
yeah, like even in California, the water's cold there. So
yeah, we're actually planning a Australia trip 2021 to do the Great Barrier Reef, so I'm pretty pumped about that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Very cool. Going to NGConf?
I don't think so. I don't know if I can't say for sure, but I don't have anything lined up at this point.
Well, if I happen to see you out there, if you happen to go, we're going to try to take perfect.dev on the road, and I'd love to have you on the air again.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'd be cool. I am going to Git Merge conference in Los Angeles. That's actually on March 4th in a couple days. So
very cool. Yeah, I'd love to hear how that goes.
Yeah.
So maybe we can line up that Q&A session for one of these again. This has been super fun.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Awesome, Jeff. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good talking to you.
All right. Have a good week. Take care.
Thanks again for watching Perfect.dev. We also host a podcast on Perfect.dev. This feeds out to iTunes, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Overcast.fm, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Stitcher. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching Perfect.dev.